What's up, world? This is Unika from Ka Speaks. I am starting this channel to be more vocal about just issues that we deal with daily and, in our lives so that I could just give my perspective. I am a vocalist, singer, community activist, teacher, and because of all of those things that I do, I've noticed a lot of things that I feel should just be talked about. So I'm gonna just put my little opinion out there. You all can chime in on the different issues. So today I want to talk about relationships. I think that there are things across the border of relationships in today's age that apply, but I do specifically want to address the dynamics because we do have a couple factors that alter how we get together and how we stay together or lack thereof. So the first thing is, what is a relationship? It's the ability to relate to another person and then build upon that bond and, come up with some things that you tangibly are doing, whether it's friendships and being there for one another or building a business or having a family and things like that. So I want to talk about the context of the whole relationships that lead to supposedly marriage and family. Number one, the first point is we are taught mostly growing up, especially in my generation, that these relationships are primarily based on sexual attraction. A lot of us are taught through media and music and the culture, especially the American culture, that, oh, she's sexy or he's hot and let's get together. And then you build these sexual relationships, and a lot of people build their whole foundation of relationships based off of sex or their attraction or chasing somebody that they're attracted to. And a lot of men get used, hell, a lot of women get used because of it, either trying to chase somebody or just having that relationship being manipulated by way of sex and using sex or sexual attraction. And this is probably the weakest thing, in my opinion, to base a relationship off of. It's very superficial, it's very artificial, it's very capitalistic, because then there becomes a multitude of things that has to be bought and paid for, dinners and so forth and so on, and it's not a real relationship. A relationship is not based off of what somebody else can buy you or how somebody else can make you physically feel. It should be based off of other values, such as the foundation of friendships or things that you have in common and the fun that you have with each other and things like that. But that gets taken out of it a lot of times, and then it's just this cat and mouse chase, and it's sad because that's just not a great foundation to build a relationship, and especially build a marriage or a long-term type of situation. What happens in a lot of situations, especially in the black community, is those relationships turn into pregnancies and children. And then those children are placed in the middle of these situations that are unstable and had no foundation to build upon. And so they're thrusted into this massive confusion where people are being more so how do I say, they're more so selfishly manipulating the other person instead of building a solid foundation for young people to actually thrive, grow, and learn from. They're being born into situations where there is no solid family structure, there is no legacy, there is no finances. The child is used as an ATM machine. Hell, our whole government's welfare system specifically targets the fathers who aren't necessarily involved, and get them for child support and things like that. And that's 70% of our black communities are in this particular condition, and all it's doing is breeding more of that type of mentality where we don't know how to communicate with each other, we don't know how to relate. And if you look at some of the successful businesses, especially throughout history, and the successful marriages, they are based off of more so, friendships, goals that people have in common, the agreement to build a legacy, Finances, meaning, two families coming from a strong financial situation, getting their children together, or the children getting together to basically continue the legacy and merge. It's like a business merger. Marriage and divorce in this country is a business. It's a lot less about love and a lot more about, what money is being made off of these situations, and not many of them are successful. A lot of women go into the whole marriage situation with, the aspirations of a big ring and a big ceremony. So we're in it more so for the party of it and the big jewelry, as opposed to the long-term foundation that relationships have to be built upon. And it becomes a cycle that, continues over and over and over again. And it is really sad, and we have to look at our communities as to how and why they look this way. Well, without solid families and without solid finances, we can't start and open our businesses to actually have any type of family businesses to pass down to our young people. So they're not getting even to see that. They get literally caught up into the romanticizing of relationships, and then by the time they're teenagers, you already having sex, you already, getting pregnant or having abortions and all of those type of things. And it's just not a great foundation to build relationships off of. And what happens is, through those situations, you get baggage. You get in and out of these situations thinking that attraction is love, and it's not. Heart get broken. Heart was really never in it to begin with. So the whole construct of our psychology isn't even being addressed, and then we carrying these baggages that really come from our childhood, because we're not properly taught how to relate as young people. We bring these baggages into our adult relationships, and so on and so forth. And by the time, we get to a point where we're mature, we have so many scars and so much baggage and so many children that have become a product of these immature relationships, that the cycle then continues and continues. And the problem is that we're not talking about it. We're not taking a break and having conversations and discussions, not only with each other, but with the young people, to look at, hey, we are in a rat race. We are in a cycle of destruction. And until we actually acknowledge it first and then address it, we cannot come with any solutions. So, as I said, we learn these behaviors in childhood. We learn, if you have a situation where the mom and dad aren't together and they don't like each other, and now you got dad and mom talking about each other, or maybe the dad ain't around, or whatever the case is, we don't have a clear understanding as to how that affects the child and the baggage that they bring into their relationships growing up, thinking that, oh, well, it's normal for me to stand in opposition with my counterpart. That's just normal behavior. And you bring in a broken foundation into a new situation, and it's literally doomed to fail. And that's because of the fact that over 70% of our households in the Black community are, led by single mothers. The family is already torn. We already don't know how to relate. The communication is already bad, because we're not even seeing a healthy communication cycle. As young people, we're not seeing, how does mom and dad talk to each other, how are they resolving situations and issues, and coming to some conclusions and sticking through the bad times. Like the New Edition song, sunny days, everybody loves them, can you stand the rain? And most families can't. That's the sad part. Most families, as soon as conflict comes up, all of the tendencies of that we were taught, all of the aggressions from society that are put on us rather, come out. And then people are dealing with this whole onslaught of emotions and energy, and it just doesn't mix for good solutions. There's no healing processes. We are never taught as children, hey, let's talk about how you feel. Let's figure it out. Let's sit here and hash it out without attacking each other and come down to a solution. People treat relationships as if they are disposable as toilet tissue. And that's sad because, our communities, our people are already torn up. And so for us to treat each other like that, especially when there's children involved, it's just a shame. And you would think that common sense would tell us not to do that. But we're so emotionally fucked up, excuse my language, that naturally that's just the reaction that we do. We don't take the time to say, how do we heal? How do we begin the healing process and figure this out? Another factor is just with relationships. Black folk ain't got a nickel to rub together in terms of finances. We already are at the bottom totem pole of American culture. If you drive through an African American community, it's much like a war zone. If you walk into the businesses in that community, we don't own them. We are not running business. We are consuming and not producing. We're not making money in our own communities to a point where we can even teach it to our young people. Entrepreneurship is damn near like a unicorn in the black communities, and it's sad. We have a very hard time supporting each other and having each other's back because it's something that we learn as children. It's something we learn. We are taught to hate on each other, and that turns into jealousy and all type of other things. So just having a solid foundational platform to start out to build with another person that could potentially help to build a legacy with you in a relationship that you can then teach that damn near is non-existent in our culture. We don't have this business mindset because we don't see it. It's not like there's an abundance of black businesses in our communities. Now, for me, I grew up in a two-parent household. I did not know that my way of life was not the most popular way to do things. I also grew up with parents who did own a business in the black community and employed not only our family, but other residents of our community. And I thought that that was normal. So naturally, me growing up, I'm naturally looking for the counterpart that can help to do that. I also didn't understand how this society, and especially the climate here in Chicago, is not the most welcoming to black businesses. And at the time when my parents had their business, they were redlining African American businesses and targeting them to go out of business. It was my aspiration to get with somebody in my adult life to be able to start a legacy with. Understanding that I don't have any type of financial platforms. I may know a little bit more about having a healthy relationship because I've grown up in a two-parent family, and I never saw my parents argue. I always saw them come to solutions and things like that. But then when you mix that mentality with the mentality of the 70% who haven't seen that, you are going to be in a situation where you're now clashing because your class or your culture that you were raised in your household does not line up with what the other person is, and it's kind of, like mixing oil and vinegar or oil and water rather. And what do you get from that? Is you get the recipe for a half-ass relationship and destruction, And I can't say tangibly that I know what the solutions are. I know that we have to find one because this is why our communities look the way that we look. If we don't have solid family structures and healthy relationships, we don't have a community because we don't have anything to build anything on. The foundation of our people, of any people, is family. It's how are we structuring and nurturing that family unit, not tearing it down and tearing it apart. So that's, we have to learn how to heal We have to learn finances so that we are coming into relationships not trying to use another person for money, and